Greetings scholars, my name is Wormwood and welcome back to a new series here on the channel where I talk about Chinese polite and honorific language. There are many channels on YouTube that teaches colloquial Chinese and slang, and while these are both fun and great for chatting with your Chinese friends, I don't see many videos talking about how to express yourself politely or in a formal situation using Chinese. As such, I have presumptuously taken it upon myself to talk about these things, and I hope you will find these videos both interesting and useful for improving your Mandarin Chinese. First of all, what is honorific language? Put simply, honorifics are the part of a language that convey the relative social status of the participants in the conversation. In English, this is mostly realized via the use of titles like Sir, Ma'am, Doctor, Your Honor, Your Excellency, etc., as well as using more formal language. In other European languages like German and French, you have what is called a TV distinction, or a formal you, vous, in French and Sie in German, and informal you, tu in French and tu in German. English used to have a TV distinction as well, but the informal version thou has now largely fallen out of use outside of fixed phrases and in some dialects. In contrast, many Asiatic languages have a much more elaborate way of expressing things like politeness and humbleness. Korean and Japanese, for example, use different verbal endings depending on social context. If you're talking to your spouse, your friends, your workmates, your boss, etc. using the wrong register, it can sound weird and embarrassing at best, or rude and outright abusive at worst. Bringing us to Chinese. As some of you may be aware, China used to be, and in many ways still is, an extremely stratified society, where knowing how and when to use honorific language was vital not only for your good social standing, but often had an immediate effect on your continued state of physical well-being as well. Now, Chinese doesn't have grammar in the traditional sense. Instead, what Chinese has is a bunch of words in a trenchcoat carrying a fake ID with grammar written in crayon on it. In other words, no honorific verbal endings like you get in Japanese and Korean. Instead, Chinese accomplishes this in one of two ways, employing more formal words depending on setting, like English, or by the means of honorific suffixes. So many suffixes. You may be relieved to hear that the majority of Chinese honorific language has fallen out of use since the New Culture movement back in the 1920s. You dang teenagers! However, there are still instances in the modern day where knowing some honorific language can be quite useful and will help you stand out from the average guilo, whether you are attending a meeting or company dinner, reading and writing business correspondence, or even enjoying historical novels. With that out of the way, let's take a look at our first honorific in the series. Gui. Even a complete beginner at Chinese has probably encountered this character in the sense of pricey, expensive. What you tell a lady at the market when she tries to sell you a dozen eggs for 60 yuan instead of 15. As an honorific, it instead carries the sense of dear, noble, or simply you with an uppercase Y, and works similar to Japanese o or go. That is, you prefix it to the person or thing you want to elevate. Usually this would be your so-called elders and betters, although in mainland China not all seniors would understand these expressions due to their education level. But the good rule of thumb is to start with a polite register and, if the person doesn't understand you, gently shift to a more casual register. Remember, showing reverence for the elderly is a virtue, but the most important thing is to make yourself understood. One of the first things the language student learns is to ask someone their name. In Mandarin, this would be some variation of 你叫什么? This is fine when you're just getting started, but if you don't want to sound like a little kid, an illiterate farmer, or, Buddha forbid, a lao wai, then when first meeting someone, especially someone older, you'll instead want to say 您贵姓, or your noble surname. For that extra bit of politeness, you can add 请问, excuse me, or may I ask, 请问您贵姓? Now, you might simply get the reply 我姓, as in my last name is, followed by the person's last name. However, the polite response, which I recommend you always use if you ever receive this question yourselves, is 免贵姓, or my unworthy surname is. For example, 请问您贵姓? 免贵姓王. The second thing Chinese people like to ask after your name is how old you are. And if you want to ask this in a more formal way, instead of saying the usual 你多大了, you can say 您贵庚? How old are you? Or 请问您贵庚? May I ask how old are you? Nerd note. Geng stands for Gengjia, two of the heavenly stems, here representing the sexagenary cycle. In imperial China, people used the heavenly stems and earthly branches to designate years in a 60-year cycle, so asking someone their Gengjia was used to ask someone their age, like so. 请问您贵庚？我25岁. Note that 贵庚 does not have a humble equivalent like 贵姓. As such, you cannot say 免贵庚51岁. Also, 贵庚 is often used towards people around the same age as the speaker. There is a number of ways to ask someone's age in formal Chinese, but if the listener is much older than the speaker, think your grandparents' generation, then instead of 贵庚, you would use 高寿. A less common expression would be 贵阳, your illness. Yang originally meant sorrow or worry, and is used to avoid the taboo surrounding unlucky words like 病, disease. You can use 贵阳 if you want to politely inquire about someone's current or past illness. For example, 您贵阳又好转吗? Are you feeling any better? Literally, have your worries improved? And finally, the expression 贵干, your business. This is also pretty rare outside of historical novels, although it's sometimes used jokingly between friends. A straight example would be 您来这儿有何贵干? What's your business here? Now, let's put all the phrases we've learned so far together in a simple but polite conversation. Here's a short dialogue between a younger speaker, Xiao Wang, and the older speaker, Lao Chen. I also want to apologize beforehand for my atrocious voice acting abilities. 先生您好，请问您贵姓？免贵姓陈。甄先生，请问您高寿？我虚度了63岁。您来北京有何贵干？我来看医生了。哦，原来如此。贵阳有好转吗？医生说吃药就会好的。Apart from the above examples, in a formal or official context, 贵 can be attached to the recipient's or listener's organization. For example, 贵校, your school, used in situations where you want to write a letter to a school, perhaps in the form of an application, or if you're representing your own school and want to arrange some form of cooperation. If you're already a student or a teacher at the school in question, you would not use this expression. 贵国, your country, used mostly in diplomatic correspondence or documents. 贵公司, your company, used for business correspondence between two companies. 贵部, your department of a government or a company. 贵科, your department of a hospital, and so on. Basically, if you need to address an organization, you write 贵 plus the organization, whether it be a school, a company, a department, a society, or even a country. All of these expressions are naturally quite formal, and are mostly seen in writing. I once had to write a short letter to the immigration office in Beijing, explaining my need to extend my visa, and since the letter would be addressed to the immigration office itself rather than any one person, I ended up using 贵部 in that letter. In other words, even if you're not tasked with writing or translating super important documents in Chinese, you can still use 贵 plus organization to spruce up your Chinese if you have to. Today we went over the honorific 贵 and some of its more common and less common usages. You can use 贵 to politely ask someone's name, age, inquire about their health, etc., as well as address an organization as a whole, either in speech or in a formal letter. Thank you all so much for watching. I would be greatly honored if you condescended to indulge the Hungry algorithm by leaving a noble like and a jade comment below, and stay your shining carriage for more Chinese honorific videos. You're all truly wonderful. Until next time, scholars.